If game one of the postseason were to start today, how would the forward lineups look? We discuss that more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, March 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Subscribe. And if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure to press that like button down below. Shout out to the everydayers out there who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here on another edition of the show. Today, we are going to discuss who are the guys who need to step up with 2 games left on this road trip for the Florida Panthers, although they are back at home temporarily before hitting on the road before these next 3 games in 4 nights. We are going to discuss what's the latest from the GM's meetings that are going on in Palm Beach County, and also if game 1 of the postseason were today, what would the forward lines look like? And here to discuss that and more on today's edition of the show, it is Wednesday, which means it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacob Winans is back. And Jacob, although we do miss Florida Panthers hockey with these gaps in between games, it's nice to sit back, relax, watch hockey in a sense of not necessarily an interest in a team and just enjoying the sport, but also getting the opportunity to just sit back, relax, and also think about topics as well of just how to project everything for the Florida Panthers as we are ready for the stretch run and with the playoffs just being now less than a month away. So welcome back to the show, my friend.
Yep. Thanks for having me as always. There's definitely a lot to talk about. So excited to get going on here.
Absolutely, man. So there has been a transaction for the Florida Panthers here that happened yesterday, late afternoon, that Toby Bjornfot has been called up from the Charlotte Checkers, which means that Dmitry Kulikov is likely going to miss some time. We don't know necessarily how long that will be. We will probably have an update later today on the status of Dmitry Kulikov. So the D core is a little bit thin now for the Florida Panthers, at least for the rest of the regular season. We know the situation with Aaron Ekblad. He's going to be out for the first 2 games of the postseason, and then along with the remainder of the regular season here. So this, we had a mailbag question from our Instagram asking who needs to step up the most during this road trip, and with Toby Bjornfot being called up, that's going to put a lot of emphasis on the minutes for the top 4 of the D-core. I'm going to assume that Nate Schmidt is going to be the guy who is going to be moved up from the 3rd pair to the 2nd pair. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Nate Schmidt, because for a guy who's gone from his offside to his strong side, now he's going to get more of those minutes with Nico Mikkola. There's like I said, more minutes that are going to be maybe at least at least in the 17-minute around there for someone like Nate Schmidt there. So I think that as far as the question, I think that he is one of the ones who are going to need to step up for the Panthers in the remainder of this trip. But also the most recent Florida Panther that got added to this lineup, I think Seth Jones is another one that is going to need to prove himself a little bit of why the Florida Panthers traded him. I know there's time left on his contract. There's 5 years after this, but this is the time to at least make the mistakes right now and at least to get more into the system for Seth Jones. And I mean, I look back at some of the goals against that Seth Jones had. There's only really 1 or 2 that I blame on him. One of them against the Islanders, that he was just too far up against the hashes, and then that caused the crash, and then Erod coming in to support there. But a lot of it for Seth Jones, I think that it's going to give him some time he's going to need some time as well to get acclimated to the system, make mistakes now. And as far as the forward core, Barkov and Reinhart are the two guys that need to be the ones to step up the most. Sam Reinhart, 2 goals since February. It's crazy. He has 33 goals on the season. That's great in a year, but based on what we've seen with Sam Reinhart last year, it's not something that we have been used to over the last calendar year plus for Sam Reinhart and Barkov. We've seen the panic and throwing the puck into the middle, not connecting tape to tape. So that's another Panther that I think is going to definitely need to step up for the remainder of this road trip. So your guys who you believe who need to step up for these last 2 games of the Panthers being on the road?
Yeah, so on defense, the answer is obvious for me. It's definitely Seth Jones. And it's unfortunate that he's being put in a position where he's sort of trial by fire. He was brought in more to be the second pair
Yeah.
right shot D man and not necessarily play a sheltered role, but to have a little bit less of the heavy defensive minutes and a little bit more ability to play more of the offensive game, the Brendan Montour role, which is kind of what we envision when he gets traded to the Panthers, but he's not getting to do that right now. He's going to have to learn the system pretty quickly. He's going to have to play hard defensive minutes. He's going to have to be up there around 22 to 26 minutes a night on any given night for the rest of the regular season at a minimum. It's going to be tough. And Gus Forsling, we got to be careful with him and Nico Mikkola down the stretch because they're going to have to play huge minutes. They've played a ton of hockey the past couple of years now, and especially guys like Forsling and Mikkola, they play the defensive game. They block shots. The style of play that they employ, it's tough on the body. So Seth Jones is going to have to shoulder some of that weight. He's going to have to be big on the penalty kill. He's going to have to run the power play and be effective doing that. It's going to be a lot of responsibility here for the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs. And that was the case even before Kulikov goes down. But with Kulikov's injury, we don't know the extent of it yet. It's looking like he's going to have a really huge, important role the rest of the season. But you know the lineup on the D side, Balinskis, Schmidt, and now Bjornfot can step up. I'm excited to see Bjornfot in what could be an extended run. He hasn't really gotten that yet, so it'll be good to see what the potential is there. He's still only 23 years old, so there's upside. So that it's a good opportunity for him. On the forward side, definitely Barkov and Reinhart. They both scored in the last game, but their game just hasn't really been at the level we're used to. The good news is it's Barkov and Reinhart. I mean, if those are the guys who need to step up, it's a pretty good bet that they're going to step up. Mm-hmm. Reinhart is clutch. He scores. He plays defense. He's arguably the favorite for the Selke Trophy this year. That's a debate that we can have another time with. When we discuss that, but I think he's a Selke Trophy caliber forward, and they're going to have to step up on both ends. The defense is thin, which means more responsibility defensively on forwards. But it's not necessarily those two that I'm looking at the most. For me, it's the sort of the depth, the bottom of the lineup. I'm looking for Anton Lundell to step up. And he's shown that he can. I'm looking for him to provide some more consistent offense in the bottom of the lineup, because when you've got injuries on D, your goals against may go up a little bit, and you're going to be required to outscore some people down the stretch. And you're only going to be able to do that if your forward group can contribute offensively. So I'm looking at that Anton Lundell line to provide a little more offense and still maintain their high level of work and effort defensively to support the D-men. So that's who I'm looking at the most, but it's going to have to be a collective effort across the board, especially from the forward group, sort of compensating for what's missing on D right now.
Yeah, I do believe that we are going to see the forwards play a little bit back, and we might see a situation where, kind of like December, where they might struggle for offense, but we're going to see a lot of low scoring games. And not to get too ahead of ourselves with the GM meetings, they spoke about how shooting percentage is up, but shots on goal are some of the lowest that it's been in the last few years. So players are being more strategic on when to shoot the puck and the higher percentage shots, and that's a lot of it also thanks to analytics as well in that situation. So I think this actually could favor the Panthers. I mean, in a small sample size, it may not. But if the Panthers do have these 10+ games where their forwards do have to support the D a little bit more, that it could catch up in the Panthers' favor, especially with how they've played in the playoffs with multiple clinching games of just giving up one goal for the opposition. So I do think that it could be a little bit of growing pains temporarily for them. But we could also see a situation where it's grinded out a lot of these 2-1, 3-2 games, and we'll only playing the games and seeing them will tell for this Florida Panthers team.
And I would definitely add to that, if it ends up in a situation, which seems likely, where they're going to have to sort of grind out these 1-goal, low-scoring games, the emphasis gets to be on guys like Carter Verhaeghe and Evan Rodriguez, who may not be the biggest supporters defensively from the forward group, but are known for coming up with clutch and timely goals. And Carter Verhaeghe in particular is a guy that I'm really looking forward to turn his game to another level as we get towards the postseason. He's a guy you need firing on all cylinders when you get to the crunch time hockey of the playoffs.
No doubt, and definitely Evan Rodriguez was definitely a big part of that in the postseason, especially with the 7 points in 7 games in the Stanley Cup final for him. So there's that. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss the latest from the GM meetings. What is proposed, and some of the confusions that we have based on what has been discussed. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to watch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. And I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals for some huge matchups coming up. Game Time even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fee, with a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. Redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you don't stop just managing your money. You start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Segment 2 here on this Wednesday, March 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here on a Winans Wednesday edition of show with myself, Armando Velez, and Jacob Winans here. And the latest that is coming out of the GM meetings in our very own backyard here in Palm Beach County is the next phase of equipment and also goaltender interference. And what's next for it, and just the questions that we consistently have. But let's start with the cut-resistant clothing. And former Panther Tom Fitzgerald was GM of the New Jersey Devils, was discussing in the meetings about something that happened with his son Casey, another former Panther, that an incident that happened in the winter this year during a game and he was thinking more on the parent side, obviously, with possibility of something bad happening, and we saw what happened with Adam Johnson overseas for him, And we've seen the situations with Jonathan Huberdeau, Richard Zegnick, even Vincent Trocheck for the Panthers in the past. And that's just Florida Panthers examples here. But I do think that the next phase, and I'm surprised this hasn't been mentioned, Jacob, I think the next phase should be kind of like the visor rule for the NHL, where a certain draft class comes in and they're required to wear it, and then the rest are grandfathered in to this. Obviously, it needs to be an NHLPA and NHL agreed upon between the two, and it's by choice. But I don't get why they haven't gone to this route where it's a certain draft class that comes in, and then in 10-15 years, then it's everybody wearing it. And I get that it's uncomfortable clothing. I get it. But what's your opinions on this?
Yeah, it's tricky because I know players have their preferences, especially when it comes to equipment and clothing and what they feel most comfortable in. Um, but if we're also being honest, these are the best hockey players on the planet. At the end of the day, their clothing isn't really going to affect their play that much. It's not. If this is truly the best of the best, they're capable of playing high level hockey whether they're wearing cut resistant clothing or not. And I don't think anyone can argue that. I would also say that I like the idea of having a certain draft class be the sort of the pioneer draft class where it's required from that point on, and eventually it'll phase its way into the NHL completely. I just don't know if that's a short enough period of time, to be honest.
Okay,
Which is it's what I would like to see is a little bit more of a swifter action to get it into the game, but it really may not be possible because I don't see the NHLPA going for it. And your only way to get cut resistant clothing and gear into the NHL on a mandatory basis may be the draft class phasing in and the grandfather option. I wish there was a way that they could agree on to make that happen sooner because the game is getting faster. It's getting much faster actually, and I think I think hockey is being played right now at a speed that it just hasn't been before. There's a lot more emphasis on edge work and power skating and the speed elements of the game. And when you look at that sort of stuff, the skate blades are sharper than they've ever been.
yeah,
The emphasis on speed and power is at the highest it's ever been. And then you mix in the fact that there's less of the restrictions, such as like the hooking and the holding and all that stuff has kind of been cracked down on. So guys are flying and there's high impact collisions and people don't want to hit. There's the emphasis on not hitting the head. There's emphasis on taking out some of the bigger open ice hits that get guys injured. So there's a lot of room for near misses and collisions and guys jumping up in the air and feet coming up high. And we've seen some really, really scary near misses in the past couple of years. And I just don't know if we're looking at a 10 to 12 to 15 year timeline where everyone is wearing cut resistant technology. I would be shocked if there's not some sort of major injury or potential tragedy between now and then. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. So it's I don't know. It's a tricky thing to navigate here because you're trying to find a way to convince the players to protect themselves, but you also have to protect the players from themselves because there are a lot of players who won't go for it.
Yeah, and you spoke about the skates flying, and especially because there's less penalties called in this day in the NHL, especially because there could be more penalties called based on the board battles and the fact that there's so many jabs on the back, and you could argue that there could be so many cross checks called in a single game, and then that could result in a skate flying. And unfortunately, it's going to take something horrible for them to really truly take action. And a lot of guys would think, "Oh, this could never happen to me," but you never know if it really could for that. So we'll just park that there, and hopefully there's a solution. sooner rather than later. But the next topic is goaltender interference. So the general managers were broken up into different groups throughout the days. And one of the topics that was discussed on the NHL at the Rink podcast was GMs were given 55 different videos of them making the call for goaltender interference. And one of the discussion points that Dan Rosen and Sean Rourke were discussing was benefit of the doubt of where the goaltender is on the crease, if it's on the top of the crease and the player is making contact with their feet in the blue paint versus if they're deep into the crease. But the argument that I have with that is the fact that if you're giving the benefit of the doubt for the top of the crease, then why is it the same color? I'm not saying to change the colors for the top of the crease to the bottom, but why is that an exception? Why is that an exception if the player goes in on their own and even if they don't make initial contact once they get in and the goaltenders go up to make a play? So that's the confusing thing when it comes down to like how they judge goaltender interference calls.
Yeah, and I think we're, as Panther fans, we've seen our fair share, especially recently, where we just kind of have no idea what's happening when, when a goaltender interference call is reviewed and discussed. I don't know. It seems like this is such a redundant talking point at this time.
Yeah.
Every year. Every year we have this discussion about what is goaltender interference, how can they make this more black and white, and not have it be left so much up to judgment. And I think part of the issue is, honestly, it's like we talked about it just with cut resistant technology. The game is moving at a speed that is so much faster than what people have seen in hockey in the past. And I think some of the calls and some of the rules are struggling to keep up with the speed of the game, because you end up with so many of these bang plays where someone just flies through the crease or just barely gets pushed in, or maybe goes in on their own, and at full speed it can look like nothing, and then when you slow it down and replay frame by frame, it can look a lot worse, or it can look a lot better than it actually was at full speed. And these things happen so fast that a referee might not be able to make that call in real time, and then you end up at the monitor making a judgment call based on something that you're looking at maybe a fifth of the actual speed of what really took place. So it puts the refs in a really, really difficult position, and I feel for them in that respect. But from a rule perspective, it's just too much up to interpretation at this point. And I don't know what the solution is as far as making it more black and white, but we got to get to a point where it's a little bit more of a black and white call.
Yeah, if they go in on their own at the top of the crease, the goaltender is entitled to the positioning there, even regardless of it. So that and they should be able to reach the glove in at the top of the blue paint, and if they're in contact and they don't make an effort to come out, if they're pushed in and then they reach, then good goal. Then that should be the thing there. Also, one more thing before we transition: Milano Cortina update. 6 players for each team will be named by June 15th, and then the rest of the rosters will be named by December 31st. So we'll know at least the first 6, which we could expect: Barkov, Tkachuk, Sam Reinhart possibly. So very excited for those announcements coming just 3 months from now. Crazy enough to think. So very excited for the Olympics come next February. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to project our forward lineups for if game 1 of the postseason were today. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. And scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who deliver incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free at upwork.com. Upwork.com to connect top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, March 19th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Jacob Winans on another edition of the show. And Jacob, this is where we can have a little bit of fun here, where although there hasn't been even a playoff spot clinched, we know the situation with the Atlantic Division. If Tampa Bay does win their game in hand in regulation, they would own the tiebreaker over the Florida Panthers. If the Toronto Maple Leafs win their game in hand, the Florida Panthers would own the tiebreaker there. The Leafs are actually in action tonight against the Colorado Avalanche. Actually on the front end of a back-to-back, they'll play the Rangers tomorrow at the Garden, a desperate Rangers team. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning will play the Dallas Stars on the road. So we'll get a better idea of the picture after Thursday. But if the game one of the postseason were today, this is a little bit of what I would have as the forward group, assuming that they're healthy. So top line, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart. Second line, Mackie Samoskevich, Sam Bennett, and Matthew Tkachuk. Third line, Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, Brad Marchand. And fourth line, Evan Rodriguez, Nico Sturm, and Jesper Boquist. I'm going to give you the floor for yours, and then we'll go into an explanation on why we have it this way. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yep. So my top line, I've got Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart. My second line, I've got Tkachuk, Bennett, Marchand. My third line, I've got Eetu, Anton Lundell, and Mackie Samoskevich. And then my fourth line, I've got Evan Rodriguez, Nico Sturm, and Jesper Boquist.
Okay, so the only difference that we have is Mackie Samoskevich on the second line and Brad Marchand on the third line. So my reasoning for not having Marchand on that second line at first, I just like in the Four Nations, we didn't see the Tkachuk and Tkachuk brothers at first on a line, and then in the middle of the game they were switched, and there's the Bash brothers that happened, and I understand that. On paper, it could be kind of like the same thing on just rats on a single line for the Florida Panthers here. But when you think of Mackie Samoskevich and how hot he's been for him, and just how he's trending in the right direction, I don't think separating him from that second line as of right now would be the right move. So that's why I do believe that Mackie should be on that second line, at least to start. And I know things could change here and there if there's a little bit of a struggle offensively. And we are in agreement I was wondering if we were going to have a little bit of a disagreement on the fourth line, but I think about this. Penalty killing is important for this one. When you think about Jesper Boquist over AJ Greer, a little bit more of an offensive ceiling as well for Jesper, and also flexibility up and down the lineup. We know that Evan Rodriguez could go to the top line at any moment, second line, which means that he's not going to be the scratch. I know, and also AJ Greer, if he does go into the lineup, that we know what he could be as, like, if the Panthers do play that 1-2-2, if they're going for the forecheck and the opposition is trying to break out a pass out of their defensive zone. But if there's the situation where one of the main penalty killing forwards goes to the box, I also looked at Brad Marchand's numbers and how many minutes he played on the PK in Boston. 1 minute and 21 seconds this year, shorthanded. So there's also that option. I don't think he would be your initial option to be on the PK and give him a little bit of rest for 5-on-5 and possibly power play too. But that's my logic on how the forward lines are put. At least I would put them together if game one of the playoffs were today.
Yeah, I definitely understand the reasoning there. And I think a lot of it is dependent on how well Mackey plays down the stretch, because I do think when you get to the playoffs, he probably has the shortest leash.
No
And
doubt.
it's no
Yep.
no knock on him, but if a guy's going to come out of the lineup, it's probably going to be Mackey, because it's his first taste of playoff hockey. He's
Okay.
also a little bit he's probably our smallest forward. I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but I believe he is the Panthers' smallest forward outside of Brad Marchand. But we know Brad Marchand has never let his stature dictate the way he plays. So I think Mackey probably gets the shortest leash come playoff time, and if they decide they need to play a heavier game, it'll be him who comes out and AJ Greer who goes in. And I think if that's going to be the case, and Mackey's going to be the guy with the shortest leash to work with, I don't think you put him in the top 6. I also think there's the fact that Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand played together at Four Nations. Marchand is coming in without a lot of time to really build chemistry with anybody. He's coming in without much time to mesh and gel with any of these lines. So the natural fit for me would be to put him with the one guy on the team who he's been a line mate with already this year, even if it was just for a couple of games. That's the guy he's got at least some chemistry with that he can jump right in and play a consistent game. So I think, and I just think the Tkachuk, Bennett, Marchand trio there, it's too enticing as a playoff line that's just going to get under the skin of opponents. It's going to play a physical game and has some offensive punch. I just think it's too big of a weapon not to use. And I just think the existing chemistry that he and Bennett have, even though it's just a little bit, I think that's something they're gonna have to use. But like you said, we definitely got options, and having Erod on your fourth line is pretty crazy given what he did in the playoffs last season, and his ability to move up and down the lineup. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He can play with any line pairing. So I'm encouraged by this forward group if healthy, which is the big question.
No doubt. And I just looked up a hockey reference of the height for the Florida Panthers. Mackey, along with Evan Rodriguez, are both 5'11". So he's the second shortest of the bunch, and he's not built into his body yet. So like you said, he's going to have the shortest leash. And are you actually going to put him in a fourth line checking role where you got to sacrifice a little bit of offense, where if the Panthers especially are on the road, and they don't get the last change, is he going to be able to sacrifice some of that offensive game for him in order to be more of that checking role? So I think if he is in the lineup, you don't put him in the lineup to be on in the bottom 6. And that's a quote that even Paul Maurice even said even last season in game 1 of the regular season for Mackie Samoskevich, right before he was sent down to AHL Charlotte. So I do agree with you that he might have the shortest leash for him. I mean, he's hot right now, but what if the game does get too fast for him when it gets to that point of the season? And hey, although AJ Greer has it's taken him a while to actually be a consistent part of the lineup, we know that what he can do when the puck does get deep and you possibly need a clutch goal. We know that with Nico Sturm and how he's been able to battle along the boards and win a key draw, especially in the D zone. I think that could be huge if you do insert AJ Greer into the lineup. And then if Mackie Samoskevich does end up being the scratch, Evan Rodriguez could just go up to that line or even the top line and put Verhaeghe back down. I mean, that's what the lines are currently at. So I do think that's an option that the Florida Panthers do have here, which is once again a luxury. So we just hope that this team is healthy when it comes to game 1 of the postseason.
Yeah, definitely. That's really all this is about is health. But if you look at the guys that you have projected to be scratches, you've got an extra fourth line and it's really the Panthers' entire fourth line is scratched right now. If you go into the playoffs fully healthy, because Jonah Gadjevich can play, Tomas Nosek, he can play, and AJ Greer can definitely play. So it's you definitely have some depth there. You've got options, and you can play any style. If the series gets physical, you can pull Mackey out, put AJ Greer in, and roll with that. If it's fast paced and you need offense, you can shuffle Erod and you can shuffle Mackey. Jesper Boquist can move up and down. You've got the ingredients to find the combinations to play any style, whether you end up in a run and gun series, a high scoring series, a checking series, low scoring 1-goal game type of series. You have all of the necessary parts in that forward group to play any style, that's all you can really ask for. And that's what really carried the Panthers to the finish line last year. Just having those combinations, especially in the bottom six. Not every team has that.
Yeah, especially in the last two rounds where they were able to manage the speed game of the New York Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers. It took a lot of not making irresponsible pinches in order for the opposition to go on breakaways, and then adjusting and playing a little tighter as the series have gone on. But hey, we've seen how the Panthers have adjusted then. So let's hope that the Panthers can also do the same for when game one of the postseason does come around. We're not going to touch the blue line because there's still uncertainty with Kulikov's injury, Aaron Ekblad's suspension. So we'll touch that at a later time for us here on the show. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, and see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.